I saw. I'll just briefly go over what we have in there. At least anyone does have comments on it. Um, so a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was just last week, there was an issue with systemd, or not systemd itself, but an issue with our setup with systemd, where if the service timed out, starting up, and the last timeout, it would not kill the container process because we have kill mode on none for other reasons. And so Redo actually looked into that later last week, and he had this PR here. Basically, what we found out is that stop doesn't run when it times out like that because it assumes it's already stopped because it failed starting up. And so post stop actually does run. And so did I the wrong PR for that one? Okay. 1 second. I think I liked the wrong PR. I like the same PR on both of those. Let me find the actual post stop. Here it is. I'll fix the. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so anyway, the idea is that we do it in post stop, basically the same thing we do in stop right now. And that way the container will always be taken down if the timeout happens. We can't get left in some state where the process itself is running, but the systemd unit considers it as failed, which was causing the problems before. So basically, I only brought this up again because I know we had talked about it last week, and I think we had said we were going to discuss it a bit more. And the solution seems like it works. Redo was testing, it looked like it went pretty well. So I just wanted to get people's opinions on it and see if anyone has anything against it, because otherwise it's already past tautology and stuff. So I was probably going to just merge it otherwise. It doesn't sound like there's much opinions at all. Right, in that case, I'll just end up merging that. Like anyone has any problems with it. All right. And the other one was the problem brought up 2 days, no, yesterday in the stand-up, the host.containers.internal etc host entry, causing iSCSI issues, and we're looking for potential solutions for that. And so I have that pull request there that mounts the host version of the etc host, which seems to at least work. And we were going to look into whether there were some alternative solutions. I didn't really have much time to look. I know John was looking at some other config. I forget the name of it now.
Find the unmute button. Yeah, so part of the stack that does name resolution is not just in phrase this in a when the Python call that ultimately it's socket get FQD. You can see I'm really prepared for this meeting. The socket call that we're using that actually gets the name of the host goes through a stack component in glibc. It does more than just look at etc hosts. It also will look at etc nsswitch.conf. This is a whole library, sub-library in glibc that handles this. One thing that I was looking into is there is a my host name plugin in the NSSwitch file, and the order it's in our containers today is not the recommended order according to the man page. Now, this might be an age thing because we're using CentOS 8 as a base image, but it might be worth looking into. We might just be able to change etc nsswitch for the container images and not have to deal with this nearly as much.
All right. Do you know how it's getting set right now? Is it just pulling the host version of it, or is it? writing its own
So
or something.
I believe it's just baked into the container image. I don't think it's one of the files that gets tweaked live by the runtime, not like Etsy host, which gets updated dynamically. I'd have to double check, but I'm like 80% certain that whatever your Etsy NS switch is in your image is what it uses.
Okay. So,
Yeah, like I said, I think what I texted you in downstream chat yesterday was literally what I did. I stopped, switched to a different task after our conversation petered out.
looking at a few different hosts, happen to be a station, some things, look at what they have. And they assume that they're always files DNS than my host name being used like everywhere. I don't know why. If it's not, you link to whatever doc you were looking at. That
Yeah, it should just be the I just grabbed the man page. It was off of Arch, but I think that it's just the man page
because we care
here
about
from my
the
browser
host
history.
line.
Yes, which that's the only line we care about in that file today. Yeah, most other things, the other lines don't matter in containers unless you're going to maybe do user impersonation, but that's more like maybe an SMB or NFS thing, which I won't
Okay.
get into today. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we'd have to, I guess, take the one in the container and modify it. The only problem, I guess, with this is it sounds like a solution, but we'd have to. I don't know if it's going to be like painful to.
Yeah, I think this is going to take a little bit of experimentation and testing. I wouldn't just like throw this one in and go, oh, okay, we're all done.
Yeah, I'm also thinking of like how to actually do it. Because with like the mounting the Etios thing, it's just a mount. Cool. This seems like we'd have to actually have the container and like modify the file in the container.
Yeah, so that's one way to do it in the Docker file, container file, just have our own copy and put it in there. Alternatively, we could do dynamic stuff, but I don't know of how necessary that is. So yeah, I think it's going to take a little bit more discussion before we settle on this as the solution, but I think it's at least worth pursuing.
Okay. We think it's worth using the mounting Etios as a workaround in the meantime. Do you think this is going to be difficult? Because right now, I think iSCSI is actually just sort of broken on use Podman 4.1. There's just an unremovable gateway that gets placed.
Yeah, I'm not objecting to that as a workaround. I'm a little nervous about other potential things, but it's probably fine.
Okay. Maybe we'll just do that for now. Because I guess with this thing, I guess we'll need more investigation, and we need like a nice way to do this. It'd have to be better if we could just get this into the build process thing. If
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the workaround is it doesn't need any other dealings outside of the scope of Ceph ADM. So, yeah, I just would like to double check there aren't any like weird side effects. You know, the other thing is like I'm running a cluster locally here, and it's putting the thing into Etsy hosts, and like I'm not seeing any breakage. But then again, I'm not running iSCSI either. So it's
yeah,
interesting that most of the Ceph containers don't care.
I can at least test that. I can try the NS switch thing with
Yeah, me
the
too. I was
things swapped.
leading, I was
iSCSI.
leading up to that. We could build our own image and run it in a cluster and see if it breaks anything else.
Yeah. So we definitely try that and see if it works. I might just go forward, try to get the mount and the Etsy host in the meantime, and then we do like a proper investigation on
The
whether
only
it
tricky
works
thing,
for anything.
yeah, sorry. The only tricky thing is if you wanted to run the whole thing through Toothology. I'm not sure how we would do that because that part of the container build process is outside of the Ceph repo. So we might need to like ping Guillaume or somebody for figuring out how to have a custom container
Yeah,
base.
I think you would definitely know how to fix the actual or make the change in the build repo. I don't know if there is a way to run a bit of tests with the container like that because it doesn't
Hmm.
run the test based off the container, it runs them off of the set of packages, it seems. Which have the
Well,
container in the test.
there has to be a place that says this is where the base, where the packages and the container come together, because it builds them dynamically for every run.
Yeah. The CentOS 8 build also pushes the package at the end. Or the CentOS 8 build pushes the container at the end once it's done making the package.
Right. So I don't know. Well, it's going to take a little research. Like I can do it locally because I can just run cpatch or whatever and hack it. But
Yeah.
it
Or
makes me wonder what the best way to do this is.
we could maybe come up with some like hacky way of modifying it as well.
True.
At least test it in tautology. We can see if it breaks anything there.
True.
Um, and then try to do like a proper thing after maybe.
Agreed.
Might also work. So that's be sort of a. I'm gonna put in the doc what the line is. We have to. My host name first, then DNS.
Yeah, that's what the man page says somewhere. I know I copy and pasted it yesterday.
I put something into the pad, what I think it's supposed to be. That's the thing we had. That's I guess the next change that
But
might.
it's the second to last paragraph before the example. It says it is recommended to place my host name after file and before DNS. This resolves well-known host names like localhost and the machine host names locally. I don't know what the rest of this paragraph means. It says it is consistent with the behavior of NSS resolve and still allows overriding via etc hosts.
The last bit about SEO is just confusing because you think that was the problem to begin with. If it like
Yeah.
goes after
Well, I
SEO.
think a problem with etc hosts is I believe it's I think it detects it as the host name. We're using host networking on these containers, right?
I believe
We're
so.
not using user networking. So I think what happens is it sees that the IP address matches its own IP address and goes, "Oh, that must be my host name," even though it's really there for the container to talk to the host when you're using non-host networking, like I can't even remember the thing's name right, but the a little sub thing for user mode containers.
Just checking. So the only time where we ever set the network is when we set it to host. But I think there might be cases where we don't set it. What is the default?
Yeah, the other thing is we might ask Podman to not put this in if networking is equal to host, because it kind of doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, like maybe it's an issue. I saw before we could raise an issue against Podman, but I never did that.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just thinking
Maybe
out
click
loud
down there.
now.
It would definitely help us if they didn't do that because we passed it. I think
Yeah,
most
when I was just saying,
already.
the feature doesn't make a lot of like reading the documentation, but the little documentation that I found on Podman about that entry yesterday implies that it's not very useful, kind of pointless when you're using host networking, yet they're putting it in anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely not helping us. We don't need it, and it's breaking some other things. Yeah, I'll have to investigate for sure what we do for setting the network, but it looks as if the only place we set it ever explicitly is when we set it to host. I think it might be left on default. It looks like default is bridge. I have to look more at this. Yeah. Anyway, we'll have to look at this a bit more. This is a pretty complex thing. But the original point is, I guess, I'll go forward with mounting the SEOs for now as a workaround. That seems to work. And especially given we want to sort of use the host name resolution anyway here. And then we can look more at maybe if this is a better permanent solution and is more resistant to any modifications to SEOs in the future. This switch, which doesn't seem to be getting touched by anything. I'll also add, since Redo, I see you're here now. I did briefly bring up the post-op actions PR, but it seemed like nobody had
Okay.
any strong opinions on it, so we'll probably go forward with that one as well.
Okay.
These were the two PRs that I thought were maybe something that were worth talking about in here. Make sure everyone was okay with it. I think everything else we have is a bit more experimental, I guess. Okay. That's all I had for topics, was just those two things. Does anyone have any other things they want to talk about in here?
There's one small thing I wanted to share last week, but I kind of ran out of time. Of course, I'm in trouble finding the link. There was just an interesting workflow issue. Yeah, I'll link this in chat. It's just kind of one of these. What I'm wondering is if we can reuse functions from async SSH inside of the path here where we do setting the keys. Because right now you can basically feed it garbage and it'll take them and store them, and then you try and use them later and things will fail. So it might be nice, we could even optionally
I
turn it off.
remember fixing some similar issue with another tracker, basically to check if SSH is working properly, but was
Yes.
when Ceph ADM is being provided by user and
Okay.
the keys. Not sure if this is the same issue or it's different.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see a duplicate, but I also don't know how if Kyle really searched for a duplicate before. So long story short, what I'm wondering is, I don't know how much validation we can do in that path, but if we can do validation, it might be nice to do some sanity checking, because otherwise, I always, it's always difficult when you have to do something like up front and you don't know if you've given it the thing that, is correct. So if you give it, junk and it accepts it and then it breaks 3 hours later, you're like, what did I do wrong?
This issue is actually different. The one I fixed was during Bootstrap when you provide with the special user with his SSH keys. So this is different because you can see these are the keys we use for the root, and they are configured in Manager.
So I think the easiest thing would be to do, if we can reuse libraries in that path, see if we can reuse the parts of async SSH that just say, hey, this is a key or not.
The problem is just that I think he's setting it with directly setting the config key store.
Yeah.
I think we have a function for actually setting those.
Maybe that's what we need to do, is point people at the right, more
You mean the command?
way.
Go find.
I mean, Adam, we have some special commands to set these keys.
I think there's something for setting all the SSH stuff. We have one for the SSH config. We have a generate key. Yeah, we have a set private key or set priv key.
That would be a lot better, right?
That function calls a validate and set SSH value function, which I don't remember what that does, but does some sort of validation. But we can't do anything if you use the config key store. That just takes a string.
That's a really good point. So what? I can talk to you over chat later. I can reply to him and say, hey, you know what? There's actually a better way to do this action. He might be doing that out of habit for whatever reason.
I mean, it works normally if you set the right key.
No, exactly. But if it doesn't do validation and the other approach does, we should definitely urge people to one that does validation.
Yeah. Sure.
Heck, we could even print a warning based on the key, not the key, but the key, the dictionary key of the name, and say, hey, there's a better way to do this.
I'm trying to figure out if we have that is documented anywhere, like how to change the private key.
I can't see the command. Which command do we use to set the key?
Ceph-adm set -priv -key.
Okay.
Yeah, so Adam, if you want to, you can either reply directly to that tracker, or I can do it later. But I have to drop because I have another meeting to join.
All right. See you later.
All right, I'm glad I actually brought this up because it means that there's something better than writing code, which is code that already exists.
Yeah. As you leave, yeah. So we have the documentation generally on SSH configuration that includes the priv key, and it says, is it not that one not in there? Oh, I don't think that one's in there. I don't think we document that one at all. Wait.
Oh, so here's the issue. It says you can make use of an existing key.
Yeah.
That's the use case he's trying to do. If there's no Ceph-adm to say ingest an existing key, that's why he's using config key set.
Yeah. So there is a function for it, but I don't think we document it anywhere.
Aha. All right.
That one's missing the documentation section.
Anyway, this will set the key directly in the config manager store. So
yeah, so priv key does that, but it does some validation first. We can actually do some of that. But the config key store directly can't do anything with that. But we need to, I guess, document that we have this function that already does this, and we should validation.
Or probably a better way to provide a command that gets as arguments the keys, so we can do the validation, not let the user access directly the manager store.
We can't block them from accessing that. That's impossible if they have admin access.
I mean, we remove this from the documentation and we put a new command when you have to provide the key and the public key.
Okay. I also just realized I linked Octopus documentation. That might be outdated.
Whatever Google found first.
Yeah. So I'll look through the documentation and check what we have, but I'll reply in the tracker saying that we have the function, and I'll check if in more recent documentation if there's anything, and if not, we'll have to add that to the SSH configuration documentation section.
Yeah.
But we do have one, and it does do some validation. I don't know if how good the validation is, but I would at least catch garbage keys, but I'll have to test that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I gotta go. Thank you for discussing this. I'll follow up on it later. I just thought it was interesting because it came out of a side conversation we had over chat, and I was kind of interested in the topic.
It looks like it tries an actual connection to a host, by the way, with the validation. Make sure it actually works.
Yeah.
I think the validation's good. Yeah, I'll go through it.
Actually, don't remember right now if you provide these keys as part of the bootstrap if we do check them or not.
Well, we use I'm pretty sure we use this function, this stavdm set priv key. Key. Let me check that. So we call it here.
Different.
If they provide their own key, we do that. We check it. The set priv key function.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah, so we do that verification. So as long as the verification works in there, we verify any key pass to bootstrap. It's just if you modify it in the middle, I guess if you use the function, it's just to do it. It's just because again that they directly didn't do the config key store, which we don't control.
Yeah, exactly.
That thing's got broken. So it gets mostly the documentation or awareness sort of thing.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if we do provide this comment, probably we have to move this from the documentation.
I said I don't think it's in that. Cause I just linked that section like.
It's all documentation.
Yeah, the section on SSH configuration doesn't seem to actually mention that function. So I'll have to go through and check the documentation to figure out what's going on. I don't even know where that function is in non-Octopus.
I can see the documentation on main, and we still reference this way to put the
so we have to
keys
update that.
directly. Yeah. If we do have
Probably didn't exist when they originally got written or something.
Yeah, probably have to update the documentation as part of this tracker.
All right. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll consider that the fix for the tracker. We'll be documenting it because we already should have a way of doing it.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Does anyone have any other topics? In that case, we'll call it here. I'll see you all next week.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.